let's get in with Matty and talk a little bit with him on the Yuma guest line about the Niners and what we got cooking this weekend, and also about his piece on Kittle. Matt, thanks for a few minutes. Thanks for jumping on.
Larry, nice to talk with you. Thank you for all those lovely compliments.
Well, talk to us a little bit about, the Athletic. They have, a couple times a season they have you guys do like big, deeper cover stories. And you have one out right now on George Kittle. And I just went through it, and it's a lot about his tattoos. And, man, there's just a lot of info there. Where did you get a chance to spend so much time with George?
Yeah, I talked to him about a month ago, and it was really for a Brock Purdy story. I was asking him questions about Purdy, and we just got off on a tangent, and I realized that George was also a good story. I'd done a story on him, sort of a deep dive story back in 2018 when he had his breakout season. But to me, he's evolved since then. He's an older player now. He's 31 years old. I mean, that itself is a bit shocking. And he's the one star this season, the one offensive star. And I realize Juwan Jennings has had a really solid season too. But he's the one sort of bankable star, Pro Bowler on the offense who didn't have a bad season or didn't have a down season, whereas everybody else did. And I just thought it was a good opportunity to do another deep dive on him. And, I learned a lot about him, and I really felt like I got a little bit closer to who he is and why he acts the way he does and why he's so really indomitable. I mean, he's always the most chipper guy, even after losses at the podium. He always begins with howdy, and it's always upbeat, and he's always looking for the positives out of everything. And that's got to be tough this year, as you know, and not every 49er has been like that. So that was the sort of the origin of why I wanted to write about him.
Well, and George is such a good dude. I mean, he really is. I had a family contact me last week, and George, they had contacted George. They had a child that had cancer. And George sent him a bunch of Niners stuff and taped a nice video for him. The kid's name was Lane, and Lane's father Larry contacted me on I don't know, I forget exactly how he got a hold of me, but he got a hold of me in the last week and was just like, hey, I know you're in the locker room. I watch a lot of your YouTube channel and this and that. Could you just get a message to George how grateful our family is for that kind gesture and how grateful Lane is. And so I went up to George and just shared that with him. And it's just like, the guy's a special guy. I mean, that's all you can really say. I mean, we could go on and talk about it endlessly, but he's a special person. And it's hard to really kind of put it into words, at least for me, but he doesn't seem like a guy who's about himself. He's about his teammates. But, he's also kind of, takes an interest in us. I always get a feeling when I ask him a question that he's looking you in the eye and he's thinking about your question. He's giving you a thoughtful answer. I mean, and I know that seems like, well, why shouldn't he, right? But, you know the way it is. It's just not always par for the course. And George is just a special person. There's no doubt.
Yeah, I think he's really bright. Your story just now reminded me, I didn't include this in my story. I probably should have, but, every Tuesday the 49ers have a community event, whether it's at a hospital or it's a giveaway or they go to a school. And, they try to get as many players as possible to go to these. And, it's their one day off during the week. And I've been covering this team since the early 2000s, and it's usually, rookies and really little-known free agents, young guys, not married, that go to these events. And George is the exception. He's the star who you see at Stanford Hospital at a turkey giveaway around Thanksgiving. And I should note that Brock Purdy goes a lot too. But that's rare, I think. To be a star like he is, and to kind of consistently go to those events. It means that, that's who he is, and that he finds that important to do during the week. And I give him a lot of credit for showing up.
It's funny. You were asking him, how are you different than you were in college? He's like, I was fatter in college. He says, in college, they told me I had to weigh a lot more. I drank 8 protein shakes a day. He's like, don't ever do that. So, that's funny because, George is a picture of fitness. Now, what I didn't know, but I did learn in your article, was that he's got a good guy arm and a bad guy arm as far as his tattoos are concerned. The right arm and right hand include Hobbs from Calvin and Hobbes, the comic strip, Master Chief, the protagonist in the Halo video games, and Godzilla. He said Godzilla's a good guy, according to Kittle. And then he's got the bad guy arm that includes Venom and the Joker, a tattoo that he got on his wedding night. I guess his wife wasn't happy about that. So tell us a little bit about the rhyme or reason to George's tattoos. It sounds like he's got them very compartmentalized.
Yeah, he does. I mean, I would think that I would say, just observing George, that Hobbs is the closest approximation of who George really is. I mean, he's just a naturally sweet, loving, kind-hearted, fun-loving guy. I mean, he loves to laugh and find kind of the humor in situations. But when you're a football player, you can't be that. You have to find a darker personality, and so that's why he has this bad guy arm. And it goes back to his love of literature and his dad reading to him Lord of the Rings every night, but he has an appreciation for dark characters, the Joker probably being the best one. And so he literally transforms. And I think a lot of guys do this in their own way. But for George Kittle, it's a literal glance down at his left arm and trying to kind of channel those characters into his personality on the field. And, like I said, I think a lot of these players do something similar to that. I know Juwan Jennings goes into a very dark place. You see Deebo Samuel and Trent Williams showing up to stadiums and dressed in all black, very funeral-like. Jeff Wilson Jr., an ex-49er who I think is in Miami right now, used to do that too. So it's sort of a transformation that a lot of these guys go through. I think that's another kind of story to do in the future, just how they get in there. And it's funny, Juwan Jennings has drawn some criticism this year because he's had some good games that the 49ers have lost, and he has been unavailable to talk to the media afterwards. He's dismissed us and walked out of the locker room. And to me, I think it's because he does go to that dark place, and it's not an easy extraction. You don't transform back out of that with a snap of the fingers. It takes a while, and I think that's part of that. You can't go to a dark place and then immediately become a kind of nice member of society. It takes a little while to make that transformation.
It's an expansive article, and for those who have yet to sign up for The Athletic, Maddie alone is reason to sign up. We're also heading into NFL draft season, and as far as I'm concerned, we can talk Mel Kiper all we want, Todd McShay, but Dane Brugler and his, what he calls the beast, his draft guide is probably the most comprehensive thing I've ever come across. I mean, it's as good as any draft thing I've ever seen. Joel Bushbaum, the late Joel Bushbaum, you name it. Nolan Araki. I mean, this guy, this guy is fantastic. Brugler is also worth the price of The Athletic every month. But this was an expansive piece, and it's really, really good. I would encourage all of you guys to get The Athletic and read this thing. And I really was I thought it was very touching when when George shared with you how his dad, when him and his sister were young, you would read these stories, and he wouldn't read them like little throwaway stories. He'd read them some really compelling stuff. And it made George kind of a voracious reader, or at least a listener of a fan of books. Sounds like he's more of a listener of books than maybe a reader, but who cares at this point? But one of the things that I loved was the anecdote that the Niners only really found George because they wanted C.J. Beathard. I mean, that's amazing. I mean, that's almost like the Dwight Clark story. Walsh wanted Steve Fuller, and he needed a quarterback to, work out Fuller or whatever. And so, Dwight Clark was there, and he's like, hey, this Dwight Clark is pretty damn good. And he wound up with Clark. They went looking for Beathard and came away with, maybe a future Hall of Famer in George Kittle. That's pretty amazing story, huh?
Yeah, I think they're real similar stories, and it goes back to what he was just you brought up in the beginning about him at Iowa, them encouraging him to be bigger and bigger and bigger. And something his dad told me is that George had trouble putting on weight. He's not a natural eater. He's not one of these guys that, these trenchermen that sit down at the table and have like 16 plates. George, had trouble doing that all throughout his youth, and really had to force himself with those shakes to get up to 265, and realized, I think, getting into the NFL that was too big for him. He just didn't have the frame for that. And so I guess, the 49ers go up there for a workout for C.J. Beathard, who is somebody that Kyle Shanahan circled. Like, this is a very Kirk Cousinish-like quarterback. We're going to draft him in the third round in 2017. I think my recollection is that they even traded up to get him. And
they did.
During that workout, Kittle's there, and Kittle does well. And Kittle also drops 10 pounds before the combine and runs really well. And so I think at that point the 49ers start to put two and two together and decide we should get George Kittle too if we can. They waited until the fifth round. So it's not like the 49ers had this fantastic insight into this guy becoming a possible Hall of Famer. They didn't know either. But, they like what they saw during the workout, and very, very Dwight Clark-ish.
No, it's a great piece. And then fast forward to Thursday night, you do have some quotes in here from Kittle from the postgame where he basically, sounded really pissed off that Deandre Campbell did what he did. Maddie, you've been around George and this team for years. George said he didn't know anything about it. If he had, what do you think he actually would have done?
I mean, I would think that if they suspected that this guy was going to quit mid-game, they would encourage him not to, but make sure that he didn't dress. I mean, if you're in a uniform, I think that was the cardinal sin here. Quitting on the team is bad, but taking up a roster spot on a night where you got low on linebackers was cardinal sin, because you're letting down your team. They could have used it. They could have bumped up Jalen Graham, Deshaun White, the other linebacker who's on the practice squad. They had moves that they could have made if they knew that this guy decided that he wasn't going to play. And my guess, and Deandre Campbell hasn't said exactly what got him upset, but my guess is that he not only found himself behind Dre Greenlaw, which should have been expected. I mean, that's the whole reason Eric Kendricks decided not to sign with the 49ers, because he knew, okay, once Dre Greenlaw comes back, Dre Greenlaw is getting his starting job back. I don't think that was a surprise, but he also found himself behind D. Winters in this game. And I think that is what ticked him off, because I think that ticked him off in the first Rams game in week 3. That happened at some point, I forget, second quarter, third quarter, when it happened, but Winters started to come in place of Deandre Campbell, who, by the way, was having a terrible game in week 3 against the Rams, eaten alive in pass coverage. And Deandre Campbell thought that was a slight and didn't like the fact that the young guy was playing ahead of him. So I can only imagine that also was problematic for him on Thursday.
Yeah, no, and And Bosa told us that, there were indications in the pregame that Deandre was voicing his discontent. I kind of felt like he was voicing his discontent while we were in the media, while we were in the locker room earlier in the week. He was, we were talking to somebody, and I think it was Demo, and he was, a couple lockers away swearing up a storm. And, he just was unhappy. And I kind of targeted him as a personality type that was going to have a very difficult time with any kind of a demotion. I had said it on a live stream about a month ago. If this guy gets benched, you're going to need to literally drive him off of the campus, because he's not going to be a professional about it. I could just tell at the time. And I didn't think it would be this, but man, he let those guys down. And worse yet, he defined who he is for eternity in that move. And that's really sad, because that's probably not who he is. And that's probably not what his contribution has been in the NFL. And yet that is what we're going to remember about Deandre Campbell. And that's what the rest of football fans are going to remember. And that's unfortunate, but that's what Campbell did to himself. Couple last thoughts before we let you go. Today, the Niners cut or released Ambry Thomas. He had put something out on social media to the effect of like, I'm healthy and I'm not playing. And do you think that was cause and effect? And, to me, Maddie, I love John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan. I think it's a good regime. I think they've had a lot of success. But, man, Ambry is a reminder that the Niners have missed 20 times in this regime in the first, second, or third round. I went and counted it out. They have 20 misses in the first 3 rounds and only really 8 or 9 hits in this regime. To me, if there's one reason above all that they've backslid at this point, yeah, you can point to injuries, but it's the 20 missed picks in rounds 1, 2, and 3 over the last several years that are coming home to roost here. Yeah,
for sure. Their saving grace has been whenever they miss, they seem to hit later in the draft, and it
right.
happened at that position with Deandre Lenore, who was a 5th rounder the same year that Ambry Thomas was a 3rd rounder, and you've seen that at running back too. Whenever they miss it on one of these 3rd round running backs, lo and behold, there's a later round guy or an undrafted guy, Jordan Mason, who ends up being really good. But yeah, I mean, I know that Thomas didn't play this year because of a broken arm, but he did not look good in the training camp or in the preseason game in which he broke the arm. It just haven't, he looked like he was going to be a keeper early on, and he started, and he played in those games. You remember the end of the 21 season, I think it was, in Los Angeles against the Rams, and had a big pick in that finale that really got the 49ers into the playoffs, and then never was able to build off of that the following season. And, while he was sort of languishing, Deandre Lenore was getting better and better and better, and more confident and more confident and more confident. And lo and behold, the 49ers give Lenore a 5-year mega deal, and they cut Ambry Thomas. I mean, you just never know on draft day which of these guys is going to pan out. But it's very much in keeping with the 49ers history.
Let's finish with Brock Purdy and his contract. It seems like as the Niners are getting eliminated from playoffs, all of a sudden this has become to the front of the topic list for a lot of Niner fans. There's a lot of 49er fans that are very nervous about this contract, and they don't want to see the Niners pay Brock $60 to $65 million. Now, Tom Pelissero reported Saturday on the Rich Eisen show that Purdy's going to seek a contract at the top of the market, which is $60 million. It's Dak Prescott. Ian Rappaport said Purdy is very much still the 49ers guy, and that the Niners plan to lock him up long-term this upcoming offseason. Bill Barnwell from ESPN has speculated it's going to be 5 years, $325 million, which means $65 million a year. And there's just an awful lot of Niner fans that are like, no, my God, no, don't pay this guy $65 million. So I'll throw it to you, Maddie. I mean, what are they going to do? What should they do? I look at it as I'd sign Brock and build around him. And that's what I would do. But you could trade him. You could sign Sam Darnold if you wanted Sam Darnold. He's going to be a free agent this offseason. You could trade for Kirk Cousins if you wanted to trade for Kirk Cousins. You could trade Brock Purdy and your other draft assets and try to move up for a Cam Ward. You could go reclamation project and go cheap with Mac Jones or Zach Wilson or Daniel Jones, who they supposedly have interest in. Or you could even sign a veteran future Hall of Famer like Russell Wilson, who's 37 next year. What do you think they're going to do? And where do you think this contract's going? Is it? I'd pay him at $50 million, but other people are like, no. But I'm looking at the quarterbacks that are making 50+ million, and Brock's as accomplished as Hurts. He's as accomplished as Herbert. He's as accomplished as Goff or Tua or Trevor Lawrence or Jordan Love or Dak Prescott. He's got 4 playoff wins. Don't you almost have to pay him $50 million? Where are you on the Brock contract? Where are they?
Yeah, I mean, Goff is this year's Brock Purdy. Goff, 2024 Goff is like 2023 Brock Purdy. Obviously Brock Purdy is not as good as he was last year, and that's what everybody's reacting to. But he's shown that he can do it. And despite everything, all the obstacles he's had this year, and they are many. Given the fact that his number one target, Brandon Ayuk, has been gone for most of the season, and even when he was around, really wasn't the Brandon Ayuk of last year.
Right.
But I mean, you mentioned Kirk Cousins, and I think that's probably the key to what's going to happen here. And everybody knows how in love Kyle Shanahan has been with Kirk Cousins, and that Kyle Shanahan at one point would have paid Kirk Cousins, whatever the going rate for a starting quarterback was. That was the plan when Shanahan first arrived. Get through 2017, and then in 2018, when Kirk Cousins became a free agent, pay him whatever the going rate was. Just get him in the building. And so, I mean, that explains his mindset. I'm not saying that he's going to go after Kirk Cousins because Kirk Cousins is on the back end of his career. I am saying that Brock Purdy is comparable to Kirk Cousins. I happen to think that Brock Purdy is better than Kirk Cousins. And I think Kyle Shanahan thinks that as well. So if you're wondering what the 49ers are doing, I think it's going to be paying Brock Purdy whatever the going rate is, and I don't know what that number is. My guess is that it starts with an S, but I don't know. Is that what they should do? I think it's absolutely debatable. It's a good argument to have, but I just don't see what their recourse is. I mean, you mentioned Sam Darnold. He looks great in Minnesota. He's got a great arm. He does a lot of things that Brock Purdy can't do because of that cannon for an arm. He's not going to be any cheaper than Brock Purdy, though. And you know what you have in Brock Purdy. The players love Brock Purdy, and I think that's important too. So all those factors will go into it. I hope that it's done quickly. This is a deal that can be done as soon as the season ends. So, the season ends on January 5, and in all likelihood for the 49ers, this deal can get done on January 6. And wouldn't it be great, Larry, if we go to the end of year press conference and they announce a mega deal for Brock Purdy and spare us all the off season that we just had with the Brandon Ayuk contract situation? That would be my Christmas wish, Larry. If John Lynch and Kyle Shanahan and Prague Morante delivered that, they'd be like the three wise men in my eyes.
It would be getting you going earlier on your draft crush search.
That's true, and we're going to have a lot to talk about, Larry, because this is going to be like a mid first round pick. So
I know
it's going to be a lot juicier than previous years.
Well, Matty, hey, man, you do an amazing job covering the Niners. Everybody should sign up for The Athletic. You definitely got to go read this piece on George Kittle. It's expansive. It's well done. It's well-researched. It's fantastic. Matty, thanks again for jumping on Niners Nightly, and we'll see you down there tomorrow. Today was the off day, so we'll see you down there tomorrow for practice.
Okay, see you then, Larry.